Thank you for joining me today on this YouTube channel. My tarot reading services so far is kind of untitled. I'm open to hearing your thoughts around what would be a cool name, but I'm kind of being drawn to cards on the table tarot with John. All right, now I know you have your pick of the litter when it comes to who's going to do some tarot readings for you. You might know personally, you might hit that search bar and just look up who comes up in the top of your searches. And, power to you. I think that this is a very important connection that we have. We need to really feel it out, much like every other connection, right? Use your intuition. The way I use tarot is actually to help you intentionally build it. And the reason for that is I see that, as we live life, do our thing, we kind of have those opportunities to test and prove that our intuition was correct, taken away from us. If we think about, say, a traditional work environment, we might have a hunch on how something should be handled. And, processes, protocols that might actually lead to us doing something else and not getting to see that, hey, we might have actually been right and had a better solution had we acted on it. So that's just one example, So I like to use this as an opportunity for us to connect with, the messages that are all around us. Oftentimes we might receive a message, and because of who the messenger is, we might actually overlook that and miss the whole thing completely. So, with the cards being telling of the story that's quite detached from ourselves, we might actually be able to connect with the message that's coming through that might have actually been shared with us by someone near and dear to us before, but now it kind of just clicked, right? I see that as a big stumbling block. I know personally that's been a thing for me before. So I like to use it as an opportunity for us to actually connect and see what the universe is trying to show us. All right. Now, at the time of doing this recording, it is May 25th, 2025, and this reading is going to be for the week ahead. So it's going to capture up until next Sunday, which would be June 1st, 2025. Now, this is just a general reading. You can always book a personal reading with me. I've been doing those for quite some time. It's just been one of those things, getting to YouTube. It's been a challenge. And my wife actually shared with me today that it's World Tarot Day. So I said, you know what? I think that's the universe trying to tell me something. I need to get my first one out there. Not worry so much about the perfection of it all, but rather just stuff. And I think that that can be a message for all of us. I think sometimes we kind of just need that kick in the butt. And then when we actually get to it, we see how much joy we derive from it. We see all the abundance that comes our way because, right? And we're just filled with more purpose and passion and just fire within our soul. I'm very much a fire within your soul kind of. All right, so without further ado, we're going to get into the reading. And remember, this is a general reading for the week ahead for everyone. Okay, I'm just going to lay out our cards, and then I'm going to share with you one by one what each of them represent and how it all kind of ties together. Now, I do a 9-card spread, and I find that that kind of gives us a full picture. So I also like to only read right side up. I know some tarot readers do read when the cards come out reversed. Now, I'm trying to go here for simplicity for us, not trying to complicate things. So I'm going to turn them all right side up. But what I like to do is be mindful of the ones that did come out in reverse. Okay, so as I see here, we had the Ace of Swords that came out reversed, the Knight of Cups came out reversed, we have an 8 of Cups that came out reversed, 5 of Wands that came out reversed, and we have a 9 of Swords that came out reversed. Oh, and as I look down here, we actually have the 7 of Swords that came out reversed. So very interesting. All right, now we can factor that in definitely, but I'd like to actually just share with you the main messages behind these cards, and we can, when we have our personal readings, we can of course dive deeper into those reverse meanings that might be coming. Okay. So how I like to read is I lay it all out. We have a card that's in the middle, and that card sort of represents our main theme. Okay. Then I read in a spiral going up, going like that, and all of these are considered sort of the supporting information to help you to achieve that main theme or to understand that better. Okay, so without further ado, we're going to jump. We have in the middle here the Ace of Swords. Okay, now when the Ace of Swords comes in for us, that's really telling us that we're about to go on a new challenge. Okay, that challenge is going to be something that we've been preparing for, but we're actually ready for it. Okay, so it's saying that the universe is presenting us with this opportunity to show ourselves that we've trained enough, we've practiced enough to actually achieve these things that we have our hearts set on. Okay, now every quest is not necessarily going to be smooth. We're going to have our challenges, all of these things, but we're going to have to really test and prove that we have learned the lessons that have led us to this point, and we are now actually worthy of advancing. Okay. We move on up to the Knight of Cups. Okay, now when we have the cups, that's usually tapping into what fills our cup literally, right? Usually tied into our emotions and sense of self and purpose, things like that. Okay. Now when we have a knight is very much indicative of that first stage of an adventure, right? In this scene here, we do see that the horse is actually standing in front of a river, and they're trying to understand which direction they want to go in with it. Okay. Now, this is often a card that helps us to come back to our mindfulness, right? Where do we want to be investing our time and putting our effort into so that things can actually grow, right? Now, we all know that time is limited. We feel like we never have enough of it. So we need to be very mindful of what we're giving our time and attention. So it's okay sometimes when we have a lot of things going on to take some time out to really pause, look around in all directions, and factor in all the different things that might impact the trajectory of how things go. Okay, that's very much what this is about. When we also have a white horse in the tarot, that often represents that the universe is sending some form of support for you. Okay, now it's not necessarily going to be a horse that's walking you somewhere to the promised land, but this represents something. So pay attention, see what kind of signs are out there for you. Is there a recurring theme? Perhaps, some repeating numbers that keep coming up. Is there an animal that keeps trying to get your attention? Certain things like that, and dive deeper into the meaning. Okay, I know some of this stuff, if you just bring it up in conversation, people might look at you like you're crazy. So you know what? Just get on your phone, worst case, Google it, see what that kind of means, and see how that actually resonates. Okay. We then move on down to the Eight of Cups. Okay, now this is very much you embarking on that journey to walk away from all the things that no longer serve you. Okay, this person here, we have 8 cups here. So in the tarot, the 10 is the completion, right? So they're sort of, they're further along than they imagine, but they're realizing that something's really not setting their soul on fire. Right now, in the modern day example, for me, something that wasn't setting my soul on fire is working in a corporate environment. So I embarked on a journey, not necessarily knowing where this path is going to take me, how I'm going to get there, all of these things. But it's very much one of those walk in faith type of things. Sometimes the universe wants to see, are you actually willing to go on an adventure? Are you willing to experience something that's different? Are you even open to experiencing something different? Or do you just like the idea of talking about it? All right, so this is very much, let's dig deep. Let's see what's actually keeping us stuck in these comfortable positions that are comfortable enough that we don't want to actually leave, although we know that it's not fully aligned with our greatest purpose and what will actually make us smile and happy and love life. Okay, so once again, just bringing it back to the fact that you need to start walking in this new direction. It's not saying, okay, tomorrow you're handing in your resignation and you're just quitting life, basically, and walking off into the forest. But it's saying start putting these things in place, start doing your research, start really connecting with different people who are doing similar things to what you're trying to do. So you understand a little bit how to have your footing as you are walking on this really path that you have to trailblaze eventually. We then move on over to the Five of Wands. Okay, now when we have the wands, this is very much a symbol of practice, right? In this scene here, we do see that there's someone who's in the middle and they have their wand, and then they're surrounded by 4 others who have their wand. Now, this could, what often comes to mind for me is when, kids are out in the forest and they just pick up sticks and they start having a sword fight, all that kind of stuff, right? No one's trying to stab anybody here, but you're playing, right? You're pretending like you're those knights who have their swords and they're swinging at each other, all that kind of stuff. When we get this card is very much about examining all of the different things that are around us that are making us uncomfortable, things that are making us feel like we're in competition with it, right? So, for example, if you're in a certain industry, you might feel that another organization is a competitor. So this card encourages us to actually look at these opportunities where we feel we're competing with other people to learn from them, okay? We can learn from our competition, and that can actually help us to get a leg up on our competition and start to be the ones who are leading in a given space, field, industry, all of that kind of stuff. So let's look around and see what we can actually learn from the people that are maybe number 1 and we're number 2 right now. What are they doing differently? What can we add to our skill set so that we can actually overcome, right? This is how we learn. This is how we grow. This is how we actually rise to that peak position. We look at what everyone is doing and we find a way to do it better or add something of our special sauce to it, right? So look what opportunities are around you, what recurring themes have been there, and what you can actually take and use to build your empire. We then have our Knight of Wands. Okay, now the Knight of Wands here is very much in action, right? We see that they're very much in motion, unlike the Knight of Cups. They're very much still, right? So what this is saying is, much like knights in a kingdom, they're trying to prove themselves and their value and that they're worthy of these different titles and responsibilities. But this is encouraging us to not make rash decisions. Okay, so as you are plotting out what it is that you want to do and making your strategy, let's make sure that we go all the way through with the thought. Okay, let's make sure that we consider all the different things that we are going to need to be aware of and prepared for if we're going to keep this momentum going. Now, we have the cloak that the knight is wearing, and if you can see there, they have some salamanders on. Okay, and what this is showing is that you have protection where you're going, but let's not be reckless in knowing that we're protected. Okay? We then move on down to the Four of Cups. Okay, now we see this individual who's under a tree. The universe is handing them a fourth cup. Okay, they've got three down there, and the universe is handing them a fourth one. But they look rather dissatisfied with that. And the reason for that is sometimes when we ask for certain things, we get them, but we don't realize that they're being handed. Right? So an example that has been used that I thought was really valuable is, say we want to make something, right? And we have all of the ingredients at home in the cupboard, but we'd rather it just show up in the final stage for us, right? Like we're pulling it out of the oven. But we need to understand that we have to use all of these things together. So if we imagine that this is about us using the sum of all the experiences and lessons and things that we have actually been handed to this point, this will actually help us to put it all together and see what magic we can create with that. Oftentimes, the thing that's going to actually elevate us to the next step is using all of those things, seeing what was here for a reason, right? Oftentimes, when we go through anything, all of us chalk it all up to everything happens for a reason. So let's figure out the reason. Let's apply something. We move on over to the Seven of Swords. Okay, now what we see in the Seven of Swords is this individual here is actually carrying away the weapons from this army that's in the background. Oh, sorry, over here. Okay, and what this symbolizes is that we need to be mindful of the strategies that we're applying in a given situation. Okay, now when we think about an army, and this looks like it's three to four individuals over here, and this is just one person. They're plotting on this individual. And what they've decided to do is steal their weapons. So now they have no power to use against them. And now they're in a better position, more likely to actually succeed or get away from these individuals than if they had weapons and were all coming for them. Okay, so this is encouraging us, once again, much like, as we talk about the Five of Wands and looking at the strategies that are being used by the other people who we fear as competition and seeing how we can use that. This is about understanding how we can actually give ourselves the upper hand in situations where it looks like we don't have any advantage whatsoever. Okay, so maybe it's your knowledge of having been in a multitude of really precarious positions that is now enabling you to have a new strategy to apply that maybe other people didn't think of. Okay, so very much out of the box thinking. Let's see how you can actually free yourself here. We move on over to the Sun card. Okay, now the Sun card to some is often revered as one of the best cards in the tarot. Okay, what we do see here is that we have this little infant here. They have a sunflower crown around them. We've got sunflowers here. We have the sun all around them as well. And we see that they're riding on a white horse. Now, as we talked about the white horse with the Knight of Cups, the white horse often indicates that there is some form of support that the universe is sending. Okay, so see how the universe is actually guiding you to victory in certain scenarios. Maybe we need to redefine what we mean by success so that we understand just how the universe is moving in our favor. Okay? Now, we see that they're surrounded by all of the things that we imagine are great, right? The sunflowers always move toward the sun. The sun is warm and vibrant. We often feel protected. We receive vitamins and nutrients from the sun. All of those kind of things, right? So I think what this is really showing us is that if we actually, as we consider the whole card spread so far, if we're actually being mindful, if we are taking those steps confidently towards things that actually set our soul on fire, if we're learning from our competition and experiences and applying those things in practical, real-world ways, we have new strategy. And that's actually going to lead us to the promised land that we're seeking. Okay, but we need to put that all together. All of these things here that have probably weighed you down, made you tired, all that kind of stuff, probably for your highest good. And now we just need to cross the finish line. Okay, so don't give up on yourself right now. This is definitely not the time to do that, because this is showing that you put all that stuff together and you got a magical outcome coming. Now, our final card in this read here is the Nine of Swords. Okay, now, for me personally, I'll be honest with you, I find that this is the worst card in the tarot. And the reason for that is that this represents that you're actually having a recurring nightmare. Okay, now we all know as kids how scary those can be, right? But what's happening here is they're having that nightmare and they're waking up and they're not even sure if they're awake. So this nightmare is continuing round and round and round and round. Okay, so we need to think about what in our situation, maybe in our own personal behavior, maybe the energy we allow to surround us, what is allowing our feelings of dissatisfaction to continue? And how much power do we have to actually pull those swords out, right? We need to remember that we are in the driver's seat at all times, no matter how we feel. Everything is our fault and everything is to our credit. Okay, so we need to consider all the ways that we're actually keeping some of these unfavorable situations alive for ourselves, right? Let's stop the bleeding. Let's understand what the root of these different things that are keeping us up at night, making us feel like we're unrested, basically just making it all feel like a nightmare. What are we doing to allow these things to continue, and what are we willing to do to make sure that these things stop? We talked about, comfort. And sometimes we know we're not fully happy, but we're not uncomfortable enough to actually make a change. Okay, so this card very much prompts us into making that change. So don't give up on yourself and make sure that you're willing to make that change. Now, as we factor everything in together, really seeing that the universe is giving you this new challenge to face, and I think this challenge is actually yourself. I think you've probably done this cycle several times and you just haven't given yourself that push to walk through over to the finish line. So I think you're really just in competition and trying to champion yourself and your tendencies and habits that have kept you stuck in this place till this point. We have the Knight of Cups, and that's very much saying, let's be mindful of the different direction that we want to take, and let's really own it once we take that step. But let's do all the work ahead of time to really make sure that we're confident as we're moving through. Okay? The Eight of Cups reminded us that we need to walk away from the things that no longer serve us, and we will be rewarded for that. But we need to understand we need to start walking, right? The universe is not just going to hand stuff to us. We need to actually pursue it, and then we can receive it. Let's learn from our competition is what the message from the Five of Wands was coming through. The Knight of Wands was telling us, don't make any rash decisions. Okay, we need to be aware that sometimes we might get a little bit too excited, act on things, and then we're going to have to pay for that on the back. So let's just try and stay out of our own way by being mindful in the way that we move. Four of Cups, let's think about all the ways that we actually have everything that we need to make what we want to make happen. Right? Very much like today, World Tarot Day, right? This is what gave me the kick in the butt to get this video out to you, right? I'll be honest with you. I was thinking, oh, I need a haircut. I need to make sure my beard is perfect. Let me make sure my shirt is ironed. All of these things. But you know what? The world is overly manicured enough. And I think the best thing I can possibly do is give you me in the real raw form, right? This is just how I'm living right now. You might see a hummingbird fly across your screen at any point. This is just where I'm at. Okay, I've had a fly that I've been swatting as you've been watching me do this reading. That's just where I'm at, all right? This is just how it's going to be. And I hope you can bring your real and authentic self to these readings moving forward as well. As we had with the Seven of Swords over here, let's remember that we need to apply the new strategies that we've been fortunate enough to actually receive awareness about. Okay, now let's empower ourselves. That's really what's shining through here, right? And I think the favorite one from this reading here so far is really the sun. Okay, the sun is really just a promise that as much as these things might feel challenging and dark and, just overwhelming, just understand that success awaits you. But you got to take that first step once again. And by taking that first step, I think that's really how you champion this Nine of Swords energy. Okay, you're starting to actually figure out, okay, how do I make this nightmare end? And wow, you can actually make your dreams come true. All right, so thank you all for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. Once again, that fly I mentioned is right there. If you want to book a personal reading, I'm going to drop the link down there for you. We can do that online depending on where I happen to be at and where you happen to be at. Sometimes we can arrange for those in person as well. But also check out the other cool things that we are doing. This is, a page dedicated to self-mastery and my tarot and different podcasts and things like that. But we often talk about wellness and different practical ways in which you can really empower yourself in everyday life. All of it comes down to self-mastery and remembering that you're in control. You're in the driver's seat of your life no matter what. So we need to remember that and come to a space where we actually feel safe enough to explore that. Some of us are healing through things, and that's why we might come to tarot, right? Some of us might, you might be the first person in your family who's coming to tarot. Some of them might have thought that it's culty and witchcrafty and all that kind of stuff. But you know what? To each their own, right? Thank you so much for your faith in this reading, and I hope to see you soon.